Welcome all listeners and our viewers around the world. We do broadcast in over 140 different countries. This is your host, Dr. FM, Dr. Francis Mpindu Monangi, coming from the studios in Toronto in Canada. I'm not in Canada, but I'm too far from Canada. And we do have a special guest today, a brother who is going to enlighten us on a number of things. And we're just so delighted that you made time to be with us today. So we meet every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live right here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And the Love Bay is online 24/7. There's quite a variety of programs, variety of music. It is called Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. So there's quite a number of programs that we have, and feel free to go and Google lovebay.com and you will find all the details of what this wonderful opportunity that has been created by our brother Theo and our sister Janice. And we are so grateful that through this opportunity, we have the platform to talk about variety of topics. And of course, on today's Africa, we have healthy dialogues, discussions, matters pertaining to Africa, and we have brought in quite a variety of guests as well. So I'm just so delighted that you have joined us today. And again, would like you to log in to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. Like, share. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, StreamYard. StreamYard, I am told by technicians like Theo and many others that it's the most reliable and secure live stream that you can have. And so we're really delighted that we have this opportunity today. So again, welcome to our viewers and listeners around the world. We're glad you've joined us, and you're not going to be disappointed today because we do have another practitioner, a brother I'm going to introduce and bring on just a minute here so that he can tell us who he is. This is our brother, Kobinna Ulzen. And I just learned that this brother speaks quite a number of languages, and he's rusty on some of them. And I just learned that, he was born in Ghana. He has lived in Ghana. He went to school and lived in Zambia, and then he went to Kenya and wherever else. But now he is in Canada. So, Brother Kobinna Ulzen,
Hello, Dr. Francis.
Who are you? How do you describe yourself in terms of what you do? And I know that our topic today is on the role of poetry, African poetry in development. So I know you're loaded. You know what you're talking about. Please enlighten our viewers on who you are. Sorry for interrupting there.
Sorry for interrupting you too, but you asked a question. Who am I? This is, you're the doctor. You should know these. You have answers for these questions. Who am I is a very profound, deep philosophical discussion we can have for 2 days, okay? So I'll skip that, okay? Because it's deep, but I'll briefly describe my journey. Because
I'm sorry for interrupting. We would not want you to skip that. Just tell us briefly.
I will briefly. I think the best way to answer your question is to share some of my philosophy of life with you. How's that? Is that an answer for you?
Yes, it is, sir.
Because to me, life is a journey.
Okay? Amen.
And I have journeyed, in terms of my family. My father was, he left Ghana when I was 6 years old, at the age of 67. And he moved to different countries. So I left with him to Zambia, came back to Ghana, went to Kenya. And so I lived in these countries because of my father and his journey. I grew up in a Catholic / Pentecostal home. So those are my roots and my grounding. And in the late 80s, I moved to Canada. So I spent half my life in Canada and half my life in other African countries. And that's basically a gist of who I am. A traveler in in spirit, a traveler physically, a traveler in many ways. And I view life as a journey. Today we've met because we are both on a journey together.
That is so true. And you know what? I really like that concept of life is a journey. It really is. It has a start. It has quite a number of things you observe and experience on the way, and it has a destination. We're not going to be here forever. And I'm so delighted that you have highlighted some of the countries where your father took you. And you know what? I'm sure our viewers and listeners would be delighted to know, what is it that took your dad from Ghana to all these other places?
I'll say this about a man who went to his grave with secrets. He was one of Kwame Nkrumah, the great Pan-Africanist's veranda boys. So he was involved in his, movement. Some would even attribute the youth movement in Ghana in Nkrumah's time to my father. You know what I mean? And so in 1966, when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in a military coup, his then assignment, which was the registrar of the University of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, he was sacked, and so he had to leave the country for political reasons. I wouldn't call him a refugee because we weren't in refugee camps, but he had to leave, and that led him to Zambia, and eventually that led him to Lesotho, Botswana, and Swaziland, and that led him to Kenya eventually, and eventually he came back to Ghana. But it was for political reasons that he left the country. And as a family, my book that I have out has my first passport stamp. You can see it's actually 1967, which is when we first left, And basically that led to my travel. There are 5 kids. I spent the most time with my father. Some of us spent different amounts of time with him, and I did. So does that answer your question?
Yes, you did. You know what? Follow that. I like that. There were 5 kids, and go right ahead and fill us in whatever you would want to share with us.
My brother Theo knows very well because I think he's been on this show before. He goes by Doctor. I'm Mister. He was one of the founders of Afrofest, a festival which is very popular in Toronto. Actually, when I came in '89, he was at the beginning of that. That's who he is. I have a sister who is in Ghana. I have a sister who's in South Africa, and I have another sister who is in the States. So we're all over the place, And my parents did separate when I was 6 years old. So that caused me to live between different families, But again, I hope that answers the question. We're all over the place.
It really does. And thank you for sharing that. You know what? I lived in Canada for 33 years. So I was in Toronto for many, many years. And to hear you talk about the Afrofest, that was one of the, unique exposures in terms of the multiculturalism of Canada. And to hear that you have been a part of that, that just thrills my heart to know that here's a brother who, who has been instrumental in putting some of this in place.
I had a front row seat. My brother's too busy, I'm the historian, I'm the writer. I mean, I was the one that negotiated the first Afrofest. It was 3 weeks at a club called Bamboo on Queen Street. What is now the festival, it used to be the 2 days they had at Queen's Park, And eventually he moved on, and I I stayed on for a while beyond his moving on, and I've now left the festival. I'm involved in another festival now. But definitely, I've seen a front row of how things developed with Afrofest in the early years, especially.
When I think of just your beginnings, I'm one of those people who has tremendous respect for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And for me to hear that your dad had such a connection with him, and that based on whatever had happened in Ghana, he had to leave. And not long ago, actually, we brought in some people, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to get a lot more people who can continue to enlighten us on the philosophies and the values and the mission of a man of his caliber and how he contributed to Africa. He's no longer there physically, but I tell you, his concepts and his values, they're still there. And we really hope that Africa would embrace some of these And I'm saying this because I'm just delighted to know about the connections that you have and your father had, and that here we are today. Because what you're doing now, when I think of poetry, and we're going to be talking about the role of African poetry in development, you are aware very much of the writing and the concepts and values and culture, and how that contribute to who we are as people, as Africans. So we are in for a real treat today, and so thank
Yeah.
you very much for accepting our invitation to be our special
No
guest.
worries.
For those of you who are just joining us, thank you for joining Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. This is your host, Dr. FM Francis Mpindu Munangi, and we are here to talk about matters pertaining to Africa. And today our topic is the role of African poetry in development, not just development as a person, but development as countries and development as a continent. One of the things we are all aware of from Professor Lumumba is we are at the table. Now, are we at the table to participate in the meal? Are we at the table to listen into the conversation? Are we at the table to be eaten as a meal? So we have a contribution, and our brother here is going to enlighten us on this. So when we think of African poetry and its role in development, what comes to mind? But before you answer that, what is poetry?
Good question. I do write poetry. I write fiction. I write nonfiction. And of all those genres, to me, poetry is something from my heart to yours. Okay? And in a way, it's personal, but it's also universal. Let's be clear. I was raised as a Christian. David, Jesus, all these people in the Bible shared their personal stories. They were personal, but then they became political. So for me, poetry is that. I began writing, I was first published in Kenya in 1985, and I'll read the poem in a few minutes if you want.
Yes, we will. We will have you read that.
But I used to write in a diary, and that was how I shared. I shared a poem, and they said they loved it. And to me, the personal is political. I mean, I don't want to divert from our focus, but we don't have to look too far to see what's happening in other countries around us. Okay, the personal is political, and so when we talk about Africa and development, if we know ourselves and we know who we are. In the past, the griots, the storytellers, were poets. They were part of our cultures. And yes, that is poetry. It's us knowing ourselves and expressing it and sharing it. And that is personal yet political.
I like that, because when I think of early on you started on a very good note that life is a journey, and we are on this journey. It's a journey that exposes us to different kinds of things, perspectives, cultures. We are interacting with others, and when you think of reading and writing and listening and arts and performing, it's a very loaded way of learning things and passing them on to the next generation. You know what? You mentioned something you have written. Please read that for us. I'm very curious now.
Before I read it, I just want to show you. This is a magazine that it was published in. This is a Kenyan magazine. I still kept it. It's called Viva. And on the back page was my poem called Memoirs of Kenya. Just so you know. But I will read it from my new collection.
Okay.
Okay, from here. And, you will love it. Okay, so let me find this poem. The first time I got paid for writing, I knew I had a gift.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. 1 second, please.
Sure.
Please bear with me.
Again, for those of you who are joining us, this is Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio with your host, Dr. FM. We're delighted to have our brother Kobinna Ulzen, who is a brother with skills and abilities that sometimes we don't necessarily see them in the forefront, but they are underlying, like he said, they're personal, but political. I liked that perspective. So please go ahead and read.
Okay, so my first published poem called Memoirs of Kenya. I left my heart in Kenya amongst its flora and fauna. There, in the heart of the country, is where my heart lies beating. I left my heart in Kenya, in the midst of Nairobi city. There, in the streets and buildings, live many of my good friends. I left my heart in Kenya, amongst the Luos, Luyas, Kikuyus. Many became friends so true, I don't know what to do. I left my mind in Kenya, for there are sweet memories of many lovely words spoken and things we did. I left my tongue in Kenya, for there is good food and fruit there. I miss the ugali and sukuma wiki, and most of all, the yama ya kuchoma. Oh Kenya, what have you done to me? Oh Kenya, you will always be a part of me.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is loaded. I mean, you're talking about roast meat and sukuma wiki, those vegetables, and ugali, which is equivalent to fufu and sadza, is chwala, around the world. And my goodness, you know what? You are capturing something there that, I mean, there is emotion, there is thought, there is looking back. I mean, you are familiar with Sankufa, when we think of looking back to learn from the past so that we move forward and inform the future. Now, when you write something like that, and now you're reading, when was that published?
85. I'm an old man.
1980. I hear you. 1985.
Yes.
So when you read it now, I mean, it is loaded. This is the first time hearing it, and it just conjuring up all kinds of emotions within me. You're talking about, I left my heart, I left my mind, I left my tongue. I mean, there's something there. So when you read stuff like that today, what's going on? What do you feel?
Dr. FM.
Yes, sir.
In the same period that I had this published, I had a short story published in Ghana, and I had an article published in a Christian magazine. So for me, that was the birth of where I am right now. But to answer your question, everything I write is like a baby, okay? And if you ask me, do I have a favorite child? I'll tell you no. This is my oldest child when it comes to poetry. So I respect him or her, But what I love, though, the most is your reaction to it, okay? For me, as a writer, as a playwright, I had a play staged in Toronto recently. Somebody cried, okay? Somebody was happy. When I see a reaction from my work, it is gratitude, and it is deep gratitude that I have a gift that can move people. So for me, I've just reacquainted myself with my old child. I know this child for a long time, but I love your reaction. I love what it's doing to you.
Wow. You know what? It puts us on the same page, in the same library, in the same paragraph, and I'm just delighted to hear this. I mean, because for me, having studied and lived in Kenya for a few years, picking up these words from you, a practitioner in poetry, it really did something to me. I was just like, wow. I mean, you took me back and gave me these visual pictures, I'm delighted. I'm delighted to hear that.
How about I go to my hometown? How about I switch gears and go to my hometown? How's that?
Let's do that. Let's do that.
I want to share, and this
Let's do that.
This is a poem which I wrote in 1999 after I went to bury my father, who may he rest in peace. And it is a favorite of some of my friends here. So Elmina is our hometown. It's a historical town. It has one of Ghana's many big forts and castles. And let me go into it. Elmina, Are you the mine as the Portuguese called you, or are you Edina as the Fantis call you? Who are you, the sleepy town off Africa's west coast that boasts of huge forts and some 2 castles? Are you the fishermen who go out to the sea each day in their dugout canoes? Are you the many souls who have passed through the dungeons of Elmina Castle on their way across the treacherous Middle Passage just to realize that only some would make it to the so-called New World? What secrets are hidden in you, Elmina, in the many family homes and clan houses that line your streets? Are the answers to the complexity of the modern African found in your many rooms? Tell me, answer me, my hometown, Elmina, for I have to know, who are you, Elmina? Are your people the believers in the gods of earth, sea, wind, or the ardent Catholics who worship at St. Joseph's? Who are your sons and daughters? Elmina, Elmina, talk to me. Are you the town of the living or of the dead, whose lives and funerals are celebrated with the pomp and glory of the kings and queens of old Ghana? Yes? Did I hear you, Elmina? Did you say you are all those things that I spoke of? Are you telling me that there are no straightforward answers to my many questions? Maybe I have to return soon and sit on your beach at sunrise and listen to the waves that rush up against the shore, for I know you have more answers to the questions that plague my soul. Yes, Elmina, I shall return. And as it says here, 1999, after my father's funeral.
Wow. Oh.
Dr. FM.
I mean, yes, sir.
I'm here.
You know what? Just listening to that does something to it does something to me, and I'm glad that you're sharing this and saying this is what you wrote after this, but you had not shared that. You just started reading it, and I'm hearing this, and I'm wondering, there is a process that you went through and you're sharing and talking about, and it's so real. There is a dialogue, and it's almost like it's what do they call that? A soliloquy. You're talking to yourself, but you're not the only voice you're listening to. There are others that you are interacting with, and it just brings this beauty that is informed by many things around you. And there's an element of honesty and openness and questioning and being inquisitive, but wanting to learn and being comfortable with ambiguity. I don't know this. Who are you? But I may not find an answer, but that's okay. I mean, that in itself is unique to Africa, I like to believe, because in the Western world, when people talk, you have to give me an answer. You can't say, I don't know. Yes, it's a legit answer to a question, but it's not enough, because we need to do more research and come up with, but you're saying this is fine. I'm okay where I am. I mean, explain to us when you read this again, and it's something that you read, something you read, something you wrote.
Okay. Before I get to that,
yes.
I just see that you thank you for all your kind words and everything you just said. You've just met me, right? We spoke first yesterday, right?
That's correct.
And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a fairly transparent and honest person. And I also do a lot of soul searching. So that comes through my writing. Okay, I just want to be clear about that. That's why, I can, and yes, that poem was written in 1999. I'd been away from Ghana for 10 years in Canada. Because of my traveling around as a child, and not staying in one place for too long. I was glad to finally settle down here. And I planned never to go back to Ghana again. I said, I found Canada. My brother sponsored me here. I'm staying for life. And so going back to Ghana in 1999 was my first time back. So it was like basically reconnecting with my roots, okay? And my father, by the way, who was an educationalist to the end, I spoke to him 2 weeks before he died, and he was still pushing me to go back to school. That's another story. So it was a reconnecting to the hometown Elmina, which I visited occasionally, and also reconnecting with the family, who I had not seen for a long time. Some of the siblings were, so that's where it came from, okay? I mean, I'll read more and you'll get to see that my writing is honest and quite transparent. You know, I know who I am, and I'm comfortable with that. And having said that, because I'm on a journey, I'm allowed to change because of the journey. I don't know if I answered the question properly.
You know what? You did, and it seems to me that you and I can have a conversation today and all day tomorrow and the next day, because the way I'm feeling you and hearing you, there is an open-mindedness there. My wife does a course on open-mindedness, and I'm just feeling that, and I'm seeing that, because it is so beautiful to be on a journey with such transparency and openness, because that's what the world needs.
Yeah.
And I think even though you haven't categorically said, well, okay, these are the values of poetry within an African environment, you are displaying that, and you are showing that.
Yeah.
It's something that enables us to deal with ambiguity. It gives us meaning. It's part of our worldview in terms of finding meaning in life. You know, your dad passed. You were uprooted from Ghana and you went to different countries in Africa and around the world. You found meaning and you have continued to write.
Yeah.
And this is beautiful. So do you find that poetry is given its true value, say, within our African context? Or let me rephrase, is it because we are so used to having it around, we don't even think about it, but we know it's valuable, even though we don't necessarily highlight it?
Well, I can only speak to Ghana because I go back to Ghana often. I mean, I've not been to Kenya since '89, okay? And Ghana does have a strong poetry base. I mean, there's a show that I go on where I've read some of these poems and so on. And so, I mean, yes, I agree. Maybe we've forgotten that, but we have forgotten. But in Ghana, there is a space. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. It's a thriving space in Ghana for poets, for sure. The show comes on every Sunday evening. It's still on right now. It's called Writers Project. You know, they invite people. And I also know that Kenya, where I have a bit of connection to, they have that. But, you know, in terms of to answer the question broadly, and you're right, how can we be political if we don't know who we are? How can we move forward if we don't know about the increments of the past? If we're all just talking or following the fads? To me, poetry is that way that helps us to know who we are. If we know who we are, where we've come from, where we're going, then it'll affect development, right? Because the theme is development. And development, there's a poem here which I'll read. If I read it, it might offend you. So, and now he wants to hear it. But it's called World Vision Babies, okay? Because that's development, okay? And the title itself, you know, triggers something. But yes, we have to know who we are. Poetry, our storytellers, our elders helped us know who we are. If we don't know who we are, how can we move forward? Otherwise, when the white man comes, we are moved. When the Chinese come, we are moved. Whoever comes, we're moved. We have to know who we are. And poetry or knowing ourselves and our roots helps in that way. Does that answer a bit?
It really does. And you know what? trust me, try me, trust me, as we say in Jamaica, trust me, man. You know what? Try me, because you're not going to offend me. Now I'm very curious. Please go ahead and read this World Vision Babies.
But before I do that though,
Yeah.
I want to finish my journey to Canada, and I want to read a poem which is a little more generic in a way, and then I'll get to World Vision Babies. So I've got this poem ready. It was my first published poem, I believe, in mainstream in Canada, and it's called Prayer for a Black Child. I wrote it for my nephew who was born here, and I was wondering about what kind of life, he would face. Those of us who come from another country, older, we have a different version of who we are. So I will read that, and I'll find that other poem for you, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. Let's do that.
So this is Prayer for the Black Child. This is for the Black child born in this country, born in this world, that may help him grow up. This is for the Black child who, before the age of 12, may have a criminal record for a crime he did not commit. This is for a Black child who will have to struggle against a white wall all through his days on earth. This is for the Black child who may grow up into an angry Black man who hates a world that hates him too. If there is something you or I can do for the Black child, then let us do it. Whatever it is, may we do our part to make this world a better place, a safer place for the Black child. And as I'd normally say when I perform this publicly, I'd say, and may we make it a safer place for every child, not just the Black child, but for every child. Great.
Oh, wow. I like that ending, because even though it is something that was motivated by wanting to address this particular child who is Black, by the way, I didn't know I was Black until I started interacting with people of European environments, because I always thought I am African. So this being Black was so foreign to me. And then I was like, okay, I look at some of my brothers and sisters who from Africa, and we all just looked at one another and said, we are Africans.
Yeah.
So then to be called Black. So anyway, I'm saying this because I liked the ending. You made reference to not just safer or safe for the Black child, but for every child.
Absolutely.
I had the privilege of working and living on a First Nations reserve or reservation or community in Northern Canada. And when they talk about every child matters, they are speaking from within their own culture, knowing what has happened to the indigenous child, the native child. And yet they are not selfish to just say it's only about our children, but every child matters. And what you just said displays that sense of we are in this together. It's a journey for everybody. So it's not just my nephew who is Black, but this is an environment I want to create for every child. I mean, the things you touched on, ending up with a criminal record of something that you never did, and hating the world and all that. These are so real. These are so real, because we live in an environment where some of these concepts you're sharing from your poetry repertoire are not readily embraced by others because they look at life differently. So in what you're doing, you're not just educating, but you're also inviting people into this journey that you're on. And that is amazing.
Thank you.
That is just amazing. Well, those of you who have just joined us, thank you for joining us on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. This is your host, Dr. FM, and we are delighted that you have joined us today. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, StreamYard. We are here every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Feel free to Google us, lovebay.com, and you will discover that there's quite a number of programs. They have music 24/7, and feel free to log in, subscribe, like, and share that to others as well. And of course, on today's Africa Today, we're delighted to have our brother Kobinna Ulzen, who is enlightening us on the role of African poetry. And I don't think we can even have enough of this kind of a dialogue. So before we even come to the end, I just want you to know that we will have you back. And that's not a threat, it's a promise. It's a promise.
Well,
we have to bring you back because there's so much. We're just touching on little bits here and there, but we need to have you come back. And it's amazing. Sometimes some of our listeners, they post questions and all that after the fact. And so we will definitely have you back. So again, thank you for being with us today. So please, yes.
No, but before I share World Vision Babies, I want to point out that both my nephews, my old nephew I wrote this about, he did very well. He's doing very well. Just so you know, nothing happened to him. He's fine. The poem I read was triggered by my concern for him. He's doing well. I have two nephews who are doing well. And also, I want to also share, just piggyback on what you said before I read the poem. In our travels across the continent, different countries, we were all the same. However, when my father moved to Lesotho in the 70s, we used to fly from Accra direct to apartheid South Africa. And that was the only time where race was an issue, okay? Because, you know, you'd fly to Johannesburg and you fly to Bloemfontein and anyway, Lesotho is where he was surrounded by South Africa. Mm-hmm. But that was it. You're so right. Besides that, it's only on my way here in Amsterdam that race became an issue. So you're very right. For those of us who grew up on the continent, it's what's your name? Where are you from? What's your tribe? Other things other than race. It's here that made me even want to know more about African history because of that. But that's just to piggyback on the theme, you know, that you mentioned, which is really important. Okay,
you're absolutely right, and I can't agree more.
Yeah. So this poem here that I'm going to read is my niece, who may be listening right now, favorite. It's one of her favorites, and it's called World Vision Babies. I'm not a World Vision baby. I was not born in a village, and do not go around asking you to sponsor me for the cost of a coffee a day. I was born in Accra, a city, and my hometown Elmina. I'm not and not in a village in some barren African landscape. It's a town, water, electricity, and lots of history and culture. I'm not a World Vision baby. So when you see those images that have been ingrained in you, remember, not all people from the 54 or so African countries fit the profile that seems too hard for some to get out of their minds. I lived in Ghana, Kenya, and Zambia, and traveled in 7 other African countries before choosing to call Canada home. Yes, I did not come here as a refugee. Not all of us come to the New World that way. Some of us come here for a better life, just like the Irish, Scottish, and England, and others still do. I am not a World Vision baby. So before you prejudge me or choose to patronize me, think twice. There is poverty everywhere, and we do all we can to fight it. We should give to the food banks in Toronto, help the people in the priority neighborhoods, volunteer our time to the elderly, and visit the sick. Yes, charity begins right here at home. Yes, I do support certain causes to deal with crises and situations on the African continent. However, let's be careful to let our stereotypes not do things that we do not care about, and do things that stroke our egos or fill some void we need to fill inside. I am not a World Vision baby. I am one of the many modern Africans. I love my home in Toronto where I live. I love my home I have in Ghana, where I go as often as I can. I have family in 4 countries, and my mother, who lives in Ghana, is a voice call away. This is my story and that of many modern Africans who live on this side of the world. and also have a home in one of the countries in the African continent. An Africa where technology, economic growth, progress is a norm, not some starving kids supposedly abandoned by their parents and posed for a photo op with some celebrity asking for pennies for Africa. Yes, that's the other side of modern Africa. The media doesn't want us to see. And let me say it one more time, we are not world vision babies.
Oh, wow, 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 wow. These are the kinds of things that energize me, my brother. I don't get offended by this. In fact, I really believe that one of the saddest things is that when we have these non-governmental organizations, I mean, I know some of them have done a good job, but oftentimes that's been done at the expense of the pictures that they are promoting, and those children do not necessarily end up receiving the benefits of what has been used for marketing purposes, which is really, really sad. But there are others who really have a heart to make sure that these children benefit. Now, the reason I said, among others, that I like what you said and I'm not offended, I really wish that organizations like World Vision, Compassion International, and all these other organizations that try to help kids, I wish they would have people from those nations to be part of their boards, to inform them, to dialogue. What is it that you see when we post these pictures? Because I am wondering whether you have ever been invited to a World Vision conference and you can get up and share this, because it's important that they hear this. I really think it's important, not because we're putting them down, but to educate them. The world has changed. And it changes even more when we cross-pollinate our ideas and compare notes. So World Vision could benefit from something like this. You know what? I would like to find the World Vision address, email address, and I would say, email that to me, my brother. And I would love to just send it to them and say, listen, here's food for thought. We appreciate what you're doing, but I think we can do a lot more when we work together as teams instead of you coming to just one-sided approach. Anyway, these are my thoughts.
No, Dr.
You were about to say something. Yes,
everything you said is right. And I'm not going to lie to you. World Vision and all these charities do a lot of good work in Africa. I'm just saying, unfortunately, I think social media has made this even worse, where stereotypes are reinforced, right? And I honor the work World Vision has done in Africa. I actually knew people in Kenya who worked for World Vision. One of my, may she rest in peace, Moisha Mpaye. I mean, they need local people. And don't get me wrong, but it's a question of this stereotyping,
Yes, Ndio Bwana.
Yeah, the stereotyping is what kills me, And my niece was born here, loves this because, she was born here. She's Canadian, Ghanaian, of course, in its origin. But and she's not a World Vision baby. We have to question the stereotypes, So I mean, that's what triggered it. I was like saying, we do have to, look at that and ask ourselves, why are they doing that?
That's right.
This is a bad rap.
This is why I really think that dialogues are very, very important. By the way, we just received a note here. It says, Dr. FM, I'm listening to you all the way in Nairobi. A great short topic. How can I get a copy of the poetry?
Amazon.
Yes. Okay, this is someone, Elmina Miriam, and I mean, I would like to get a copy of that as well. So thank you. Now that I know about this, I will definitely make sure that I have the copy of that, and not just a copy of it, but I want to read it. And here's another note we have also just received. It says, "Hello, Kobinna. Thank you for the passion you attach to your writings. This is Carol in Kingston, Jamaica. Yaman. All the way from Kingston."
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So it is encouraging to know that there are there's value in poetry, and oftentimes we do not realize that we need to be intentional about sharing
Absolutely.
these. So I had asked the question in terms of whether you see that people are beginning within our African context to value these. Now, I know a lot ends up being written, but sometimes it gets written and we never know it's out there, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some of the ways people could use to promote poetry?
Dr. FM, I have to tell you the truth. As a writer who does not make money from writing, I had a decent day job. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. The
Yes.
reality is the world has changed, okay? You know, the world has changed a lot. And, the written word has gone to the dogs. We live in a world where unless we do have a video conversation, it won't be heard. So to answer your question, I think the only way poetry can come out is people recording their poems. I mean, the world has changed. We are now, everything is video. Everything is a video. Even Amazon, where I saw my books, asked me to post a video. Back in the day, Amazon would just say, give a review. So to answer your question, it's the world that has changed, and technology has affected everything in a good way. But in terms of poetry, I think it's brought it down because it's a performance kind of thing. I mean, in Ghana, there's still live venues, but it's a performance thing that people do. People read. We live in a world of TikTok. I'm sorry to say, So we have to evolve. Poetry has to evolve and become that to be relevant and to reach people.
I think on that, you're also touching on the fact that when we talk about development, we need to grow with the times.
Absolutely.
Because this is part of the development that we have to be a part of.
Yes. Yes.
Things have been written, things have been established, but let's share them. How do we share them? The world has changed. Now we have different avenues of sharing. I mean, today we are doing this. I am broadcasting this from the US. You are in Canada. We have people from Kingston in Jamaica. We have people in Kule, Nairobi. And we have people all over the world. And so we need to be creative. We need to be intentional in terms of sharing this, because I am actually wondering, and I think this is why I made that comment, my brother, about I wish you would be able to participate in a World Vision conference and share this perspective, not to put them down, but to simply say, hey, listen, I am not a World Vision baby. And let's be real. You know what? Not everybody is about, instead of drinking a coffee, give me the 50 cents or the dollar so that you help me. There are other places where people could use that, but let's be realistic.
Yes.
Let's tell people the truth.
Yes, exactly.
Because in the cities, life is quite different. So thank you for mentioning that, the journey of collection of poems. It's important. It's important for us to find ways to share these, because life is a journey and it has changed, and it keeps evolving as we travel. And so, again, we're delighted.
And to answer your question, back to the theme, that's the challenge of technology, okay, and development in Africa. We have all this technology. Everybody in Ghana has a cell phone, but how are we using it? You know what I mean? How are we using it to our advantage instead of just, we have to, that's a challenge of, are we just going to follow technology, or are we going to be leaders and use technology in a way that, helps us, or just buy into what's being sold to us, That's a challenge we face, right?
You know what? People like you, I think you have this gift of stirring us up from the inside. when we think of motivation, oftentimes, there could be other things that happen from the outside, but with poetry, you are speaking to the inside. You're speaking to us from the inside out, and so in terms of developing poetry skills and passing them on to others, do you have any formal avenues that you use to doing this, or is it mostly by just what you do and what you write, your performances, and yeah, how do
Yeah,
you pass on the information?
I have to be honest with you. I love to write. I'm grateful that my writing moves people. But what I'm not good at in this modern era of social media is marketing. I don't do too well. And I have to be honest about that. You know what I mean? And that's why I falter. This is the first interview I've had about this book. This book has been out for about 2 months now. So again, that just shows you. But it comes down to the question of people write for different reasons. People do different things for different reasons. I mentioned to you earlier on that I began writing in a diary. So I've never lied about the fact that anything I write is for me personally first, before the world. We did a musical in Toronto in June about, it was an African musical. And again, I was commissioned to do it. But my writing is for myself, but no, I don't do too well in marketing. And that's where I falter, but there are ways, like I said, if I was to be a good marketer, I'll be on YouTube right now with a clip, a video, I'll be promoting it and so on. You know what I mean? And the thing about poetry too, which I think is unique, is that we can reach the younger generation. Now, their version of poetry may be different. They may call it, it's more hip hop, more rap, spoken word. But yes, that's the beauty of poetry. It's not a history book. It's not a long story to read. It's something that, at its heart, can touch many and cross generations. In a way, it's what the griots did of old. They touched everybody. So for me, that's the beauty of it all. But yes, I don't do very well in the marketing area. I'm not going to have to be honest about that. I could do more.
We certainly appreciate your honesty and openness as far as that is concerned. And you know what? It's opportunities like these as well. When we have people like you sharing what you're doing, we can also let other people know what is happening, because it seems to me that some of the things you've written, my brothers, are some of the best secrets around. And we don't want them to continue to be secrets. We want
I appreciate that.
People
I don't
to
know how much time
about
we have. How much time do we have, Dr. FM?
You know what? We are looking at about, I would say 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, then. Well, I cannot leave without reading one of the many, 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 many poems I've written about my mother.
Please go ahead.
Who is my heart? Ahead. I really, my mother is dear to me. Her death was even more dear to me. We'll leave that. We'll leave that at that. We'll talk about that in private. But this is one of the poems that I wrote for her. I had been here for a while. She was visiting a sister in England, and I went to visit my mother. And on the way back, on the plane ride back here, I cried, because I realized that for the first time that one day my mother is going to die. When you are close to your mother and she's your strength, and I was a timid child. I had asthma, severe asthma. So I was very close to her. She used to drag me to hospitals with skin rashes. Okay. So for me, that realization, that my mother was one day going to pass away, hit me. And this is where this poem I'm going to read to you comes from. And this I read to her in her life before she passed away, by the way. So she heard it.
This is wonderful. That even makes it really special that she heard the words. You know how oftentimes we wait until someone has died and then we say all these nice things. I'm so glad you're just about to share this. By the way, I just want to tell you that I'm going to extend our time with a little more minutes. So I want us to have 10 to 15 minutes. So brother, read what you need to read. This is important.
This is a must read because
this is important.
Okay, so it's called Walking Together. I remember her in the prime of her life. I used to walk with her, down the road with her, proud of her, loving her, saying to myself, that's my first lady, my special woman, and my sweet mother. And as I walked down the road with her recently on the streets of London, her gray hair creeping out from under her brown wig, I knew she was still my special woman. And I love her so, and I'm real proud of her. Her hands were feeble. She couldn't see too well without her glasses that she'd forgotten to bring along. I walked with her, beside her, talking and thinking, you will always be my first lady, and I will always love you. Then she said to me in her firm voice, it was nice walking with you. And I thought to myself, Mommy, you are still my first lady, my special woman, and my sweet mother. And in my heart, we always will be walking together. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Oh, my brother. You know what? I think one of these days when we bring you back, we might have to think about doing something like this around Mother's Day.
Yeah, sure.
So that perhaps you and I could share some stories about our mothers as well, because oftentimes these are the heroes that go unsung. You know, they become our unsung heroes.
Oh yeah.
So for me to know that you actually read this to her before she died.
Oh yeah.
And the picture you just painted, you know, gray hair on the streets in London. I mean,
yeah.
I've been to London before, and I'm just picturing you walking down the street with this in mind and having a conversation with Mom and walking down the street with her and knowing that she's not going to be here forever.
Yeah, it hits you, right? Yeah, one day that you're gonna die.
It does, my brother. It does.
She won't live forever.
And oh my goodness, this is powerful. I know that there are some people who joined us later, and we're just so glad that you made time to be with us today. Today we're talking with our brother, Kobinna Ulzen, who is on a journey, and this journey has allowed him to write things of eternal value, if I might put it that way. Things that speak to the heart, speak to the soul, speak to us as a people, speak to us from within. And I liked what you said about, you know, poetry is about who we are. Who are we?
Yeah.
And that comes from understanding who we are. And then I'm tying this together with the connection your dad and yourself have had with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
Yeah.
And when we think of Pan-Africanism and saying, you know, this is who we are. Let's embrace who we are so that when other people come to us and we're interacting with other people, we know fully well who we are. And we're going to represent ourselves in Africa in ways that would contribute to a better world. And the poem that you just read about, you know, I'm not a World Vision baby. I'm like, wow. You know, my brother, that is so powerful. That can only come from someone who knows who they are.
Well, Dr. FM.
Yes, sir.
Do you want another similar poem?
Yes, sir. Please. That's why I extended the time a little bit. Please go ahead.
Well. But before, I will leave the other poem for people to read in the book. But it's called "The Children Are Crying," and it was. I mean, you know, it speaks the same theme again. But what I want to actually share with you is a father poem. I read about Elmina, the hometown, but I want to read a poem about my father also. Okay, because one of the projects I'm working on is a memoir about the relationship between me and my father. because I was a kid who spent the most time with him. And I want to share some of him, not as a Pan-Africanist, but as a father. And I want to share two poems actually about my father. One that was read to him before he passed away, and then one was read. The one I wrote after I had a chance to reflect on who he was. So if you don't mind, I will read this to you. It wasn't me who read it to him. My sister was with him. She read it to him and explained to him what the poem meant, because he's not a poetic kind. And the only reason why I'm doing two poems is that the relationship between us men sometimes and our fathers can be traumatic, or difficult. And so to me, the two poems are sort of partners. So let me read the first one. It's called A Son, a Man, a Boy. He lost a son, but gained a man. He lost the boy he could boss around, lay guilt trips on, a good yes dad boy. He lost one he could treat as a pawn in this weird scheme called family. Yet he gained a man who can stand tall with his head held high before crowds, a man who could strike his breast and say, yes, me, my way, without regret or remorse. A man who loves a world that loves him too. Yet, can this dad accept this man? Can he look him eyeball to eyeball and show him the love and respect he deserves? He lost a son, yet the world gained a man, a noble man, a brave man, a caring man, and maybe he may never know the friendship of this man, for in his eyes, the boy will always be just a boy.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, my brother. Thank you for sharing that. Listen, someone is asking here, is Mr. Ulzen reading his poetry anywhere around Toronto anytime soon? This is from Yetunde in Toronto, and I guess they're just trying to figure out there's some, you know what, my brother, it seems you need to be creating opportunities to actually say, I'm gathering at this place, and there are places where you don't even have to rent, you can just say, I'm gathering at such a place, downtown at this university, and I'll be reading my poems, and please come.
Tell yes. The gentleman, the person I'll give you my Instagram, what do you call it, handle. If I'm going to do anything, it'll be on Instagram or Facebook. Okay. Because honestly speaking, I don't have any plans, but maybe in future. Okay. We'll just say maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is the platform to share and cross-pollinate ideas, and so food for thought.
Yes, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate the thought and the idea. I really do. But I'm being honest again, I don't have any specific plans to read as yet. But if it was to happen, I'll share it on my Instagram, okay?
Excellent. Let's read the next one.
Yes, I'm just trying to find. Give me a few moments, please, to find it.
Okay, sure. Again, we're just so delighted that our viewers and our listeners around the world are with us today. We have our brother Kobinna Ulzen, who is a poeter, who is an published brother who is making a difference around the world, and not just for African development, but to help people understand things from within, as poeters do. And so we're just so delighted that our brother Kobinna Ulzen is with us today. And again, this is Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're delighted that you are with us today, and thank you for being with us.
Great. Thank you so much. I've just put my handle on there. My Instagram is spelled wrongly. I apologize. Okay, so as you can see from the poem I just read, in life, I judge my father a little on the harsh side. It happens, I mean, my father and I had a good relationship. However, he was a womanizer. I mean, as some men are. He was a badge-carrying womanizer. He did a lot for the continent. And I always favored my mother, So, but let's just say later in life, as I grew older myself, I realized that maybe I was a little harsh in the way I judged the man. And so I wrote a poem on that reflection. and it's called Conversations We Never Had. If I could see you now, I'd talk to you man to man, not father to son as we have in the past. If I could see you now, I'd say thank you. Thank you for being the best father you knew how to be. First, you stepped to the plate. I knew you from the day I was born. Not only did I know you, you clothed me, fed me, made sure I went to school, university, and then some. I thank you for doing all you could to make my earlier years easier for me at times when we were miles away from the land of my birth. Whatever your reasons were, even though I don't know, you chose to part ways with Mom. I thank you, Dad, for moments that always stand out. When I got burnt, you were there. When I was unwell, you were there. When I needed to learn to drive, you taught me reverse. There are many moments that I remember. If you were here right now, I'd ask you some difficult questions. Things I don't understand about you. Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy? Why, Daddy? Would you seek to tear down people dear to me? Why all those liaisons you had with this one and that one? Why did you not treat each of your children the same? Why the need for more and more when there wasn't more to give? There are more questions I have, but these will do for now. Daddy, my daddy, as I journey on and look in the mirror and see the image of me, which is the exact image of you, I understand that family is important. You knew how to hold us together when all 5 kids were warring. Daddy, my daddy, as I age, I understand you had concerns, as we all do. You drew on the God you knew, and I draw on mine to see me through life's many changes. Daddy, my daddy, if you were here now, I'd have us sit down in my solarium and get you some beer, because I know you loved yours. Would look back at those moments we shared, how you strive to lay a foundation in me of family, living within my means, the value of friends, and more. I'd show you what I've been able to do with my life and where I'm heading, and I'll ask for your advice, because sometimes I wish you were here. Yes, Daddy, if you were here, we'd start to have a conversation, the first of many conversations we never had.
This is powerful, my brother. What a way to bring this program to a close on that note. I mean, your dad was professor. I can see the philosophy and professor aspect within you emerging now as you reflect on some realities in terms of who you are and what you've been exposed to and the role that your father played. You know, just last weekend, this just came to me as I was listening to your poetry. There was a conference, not really a conference as such, but it's different organizations coming together in the Milwaukee area here in the US, and they were talking about fatherhood.
Yeah.
There were hundreds and hundreds of men, my brother, to share ideas. The mayor of the city got up and he spoke very well, and how we need fathers and role models. And it just took me back to my own trauma. And trauma is growing up in an environment where I didn't know my dad until I was 20. I went to look for him.
Wow.
And when we connected, he was so proud to apologize or say anything to make me feel better. In fact, I felt like punching the lights out of him, but I realized that would not help.
Yeah.
By the time he died, we had a great relationship. I loved my dad. I have tremendous respect for him, even though he's dead now. And I'm saying this not to put him down, but to just say, I wonder how many others, my brother, out there who have this cry and would need an environment where we can share ideas and heal. And this is a journey. You talked about life being a journey earlier. We're all on a journey. Even though we have healed, it's continuing to heal because we never arrive until we get to the other side of eternity.
Absolutely.
And so, my brother, what a delight it has been to have you here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having me.
You know what? I'm just wondering, my brother, any closing remark? If you said, you know what, from all that I've said today, here's one thing that I would like to leave with you. Take a minute to just let us know.
Well, I'll close the way I began about the fact that life is a journey, and also on the theme. I think we need to slow down a bit on the journey and breathe and enjoy and reflect and see where we've come from, so we can move forward. And that's all I can say. I think as a poet, that's what it does. It makes you pause, slow down, and reflect. I hope we all have time to do that. And also to be kind to ourselves too, because we do live in a world now where there are many challenges, family, technology, and so on. And it's always good to remember that, see how far we've come on that journey. And by God's grace and with His help, to quote Osibisa, we are going, heaven knows where we are going. We are going, we will get there. We will get there. And may we all get there together. I hope that helps. I'm not very philosophical.
You know what? Those are powerful words, my brother. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure our viewers and our listeners are appreciating this exposure that we have had to be with you today. You're talking about we need to slow down. There are times we really need to pull back, slow down, reflect, take time to process things, and be kind to ourselves. Those are powerful parting words, my brother. And we're just so delighted that you have been, you have made time to be with us. Again, this has been a powerful, powerful opportunity that we have had with our brother, Kobinna Ulzen, who is a poet based in Toronto, who has lived in different countries in Africa and around the world. And what a delight it has been for us to have you, my brother. And of course, to our viewers and our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. We will be again together next week, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're right here live on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And we're delighted that you tune in and make time to be with us. Please go and log in, subscribe, share, and like. Share the channel with others. We are on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course, StreamYard. And so again, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to being with you again next week. Thank you for being with us. Bye for now.